West Ham are closing in on two signings. Niclas Fullkrug has completed his medical ahead of his £27.5 million move from Borussia Dortmund. He will sign a 3-year contract with the option of a further year. Guido Rodriguez is a free agent after he left Real Betis, he too had a medical this weekend. Dan, it feels like Julien Lopetegui is getting everything he wants.
Yeah, that's maybe, Dan will know better than me, that's maybe what he didn't have at Wolves, which was led to being probably one of the reasons that he walked away from that job a year ago. I think it's encouraging signs for West Ham. I think it's quite clear, you can see from the signings they've made which ones are maybe leaning more towards being Lopetegui signings and which ones are club signings with Tim Steiden. But it's an exciting summer for West Ham. I don't know whether you remember last year when we were saying, oh, they haven't done any business yet, they need to do some business, and they signed a glut of players in a row. It feels very much like that now. Fullkrug's a really interesting one. You know, Wan-Bissaka, if he goes there as well, can he reinvent himself? But I just think it's a really positive thing that they've got this European class manager with European pedigree. They're backing him, and you know, West Ham fans will hope that they can get back to where they were a couple of years ago, pushing towards Europe and playing European football again. And if they do that, they've got a manager that knows what he's doing in those areas. Dan mentioned Tim Steiden. How big of an impact has he had on West Ham as well?
Well, Olivia, I mean, I think the youngsters tend to say, I think Tim Steiden and West Ham are cooking in this window because the signings have been very impressive. I mean, when you look at the blend of ages, as you mentioned, you know, Fullkrug being 31, but also Guido Rodriguez we'll talk about in a second. But, you know, Crysencio Summerville, very exciting young player to learn from the likes of Mohamed Kudus and Jared Bowen. Maximilian Kilman at 27 years old, you know, Premier League captain coming into that dressing room. I think, you know, Tim Steiden, as well as Julien Lopetegui, I think have clearly worked very well together in terms of a strategy to really reinforce this West Ham side in areas, I think, let's not forget. I think sometimes we see signings and we go, did that team really need that? Or did that team, you know, it seems like it was just a transfer they kind of did because it seemed kind of feasible just at the time. But I think when you look at all of West Ham signings that they've made this window, you can look at them and go, I get that, I understand that. I think that's really going to address maybe a weakness they had last season. So I think it's been really impressive for West Ham. And I think if I was a West Ham fan, I'd be pretty excited by these signings.
Tell us a little bit more about Guido Rodriguez then.
Well, I think, you know, he joins from Real Betis on a free contract, free agent, I should say. And I think when you look at what he could bring to West Ham, you know, he's a defensive midfielder, and we know they conceded a lot of goals last season under David Moyes. You know, and I don't think that he ever got to a conclusion as to why that was, whether it was from set pieces or on the counter. And I think what Guido Rodriguez will offer is just some protection for that back four or back five. I think you look at his pedigree in the last kind of 6, 7, 8 years. He's been part of Argentina's Copa America squads that have won back-to-back competitions. He was also part of the World Cup winning squad, of course, as well, just a few years ago. And he maybe didn't play a pivotal part in those competitions, but he featured in all of them. And I think, you know, he has 30-plus caps for Argentina. So I think he brings a wealth of experience at 30 years old. And I also think this shows the attraction of Julien Lopetegui as well in terms of his pedigree and the achievements he's had in his career, because I think players now look at West Ham, and it's no disrespect to David Moyes whatsoever, but I definitely think Lopetegui does kind of attract a different type of market, I'd say. And you mentioned him at Wolves. I think he's just limited by Wolves' situation at the time. Yeah, whereas I think you look at West Ham, he comes into a really good situation there. Whereas I think we mentioned Tim Steiden as a technical director. I think Steiden feels he has a point to prove after the last windows with David Moyes as well.
With David Moyes, West Ham fans weren't too happy with the style of football they were playing. I mean, West Ham are making moves in this transfer window, but going for someone like Niclas Fullkrug, does that give an indication of perhaps maybe how West Ham are going to play this season? And should West Ham fans feel excited by that style of football?
I don't think he necessarily means it's going to be like a long ball, direct. Of course, you know, if you've got a striker like Fullkrug, you have to put crosses in the box to serve him, otherwise there's no point him being there. But he'll be more of a facilitator. We've seen Lopetegui work with strikers of this profile before at other clubs. He's been at Fullkrug, will hold the ball up and bring their more exciting attacking players into the game. And I think that's the thing with West Ham now. You know, you look at Bowen, Kudus, obviously we don't know what's going on with Paquetá at the moment, but they've got those exciting attacking midfield players. If Fullkrug can facilitate all that, Lopetegui tightens them up at the back, which I think he will. They're an attractive proposition. They're a London-based club, big stadium, have won a trophy recently. I think players want to go to West Ham. I think although last season was maybe slightly an off season, I think their growth over the last 5 years has probably been up there with any other team in the Premier League in terms of what they were to what they are now. So I think West Ham are a really attractive proposition, and I don't think Lopetegui's football is necessarily, it's not going to be really expansive and really attacking. That's not what he's about. But it's that element of control and possession and keeping the ball, and maybe that was what wasn't there under Moyes.
I mean, you mentioned tightening things up at the back. There is also a growing optimism they can strike a deal with Manchester United for right-back Aaron Wan-Bissaka. The clubs remain in talks over the fee and the structure of the payments. I mean, Dan, you've been watching Manchester United in pre-season, and Aaron Wan-Bissaka has actually played a fair bit. Should we read anything into that or not really?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's played a lot for Manchester United in pre-season, just a lot to do with the reasoning that Diego Dallo's been having a break, of course, from the Euros representing Portugal. And Manchester United don't really have any other options at right back at the moment. We've already mentioned the left back, so who aren't available in pre-season. So I wouldn't go too much into Aaron Wan-Bissaka featuring in pre-season. We've all seen transfers happen so quickly. Players leave the squad or, the training ground, and a move is done within 24 hours. I think with Aaron Wan-Bissaka, though, for West Ham, we've talked a lot about it. We talked about the defence already as well. I think he will provide a lot of defensive cover for them. And I think if this does happen, I think it will be a much needed maybe change of scenery for Wan-Bissaka, just restart his Premier League career, and also just another solid signing for Julien Lopetegui.